Good afternoon. This is Chris Riley. Thanks so much for spending your lunch hour with us to learn some more about some of the new technologies that HPE will be having in the kind of the server storage and virtualization space, and particularly for those that are looking at is it kind of time for one more refresh before moving to the cloud. So we'll focus primarily on storage here today. And I'm joined today by Mark Kravitz, who's a Solutions Business Manager for Data Services and Storage at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. So I'm happy to have Mark with us today. So we have a lot of interesting information for you. So we'll just kind of take a peek at the agenda. So a lot of information in there. So one is we'll be touching on all these areas today, although perhaps not in the order that is listed, but they'll be looking at the Private Cloud Business Edition, as well as the public cloud integration, kind of how do you kind of manage the environment, do updates for the environment. We'll also be looking a lot at some of the hypervisors today. So as most folks know, there's been a lot of changes in VMware's licensing structures and pricing. And so the Hewlett-Packard also now has an interesting alternative for that for clients to consider in their VM Essentials piece, which also ties into some of the things we're already going to be talking about. So Mark will be spending probably a good bit of time talking about VM Essentials, as well as looking at these other topics that we have here. All right, a little bit of housekeeping. First is that hopefully you have your pizza in front of you. If you don't have that pizza, just jot down Julie Dellinger's email address, and she will try to help you out if your pizza doesn't show up here shortly. But give them a few minutes to find your office location or your home office, depending on where you may be working today. Okay, the audio is in presentation mode, so you'll be able to hear Mark and I, but we won't be able to hear you, sadly. But we do that so that any sounds where participants maybe don't come through to the whole group. But however, you can reach me at any point during today's session through the chat tab, as well as through the questions tab. So if you just want to jot any questions down that come to mind as we're speaking, I'll save those up to the end for the Q&A at the end, and then I'll read those questions out to Mark so he can respond to those at the conclusion of his presentation piece. This PowerPoint deck, as well as the webinar, the webinar is recorded, and both pieces will be made available to you via email later on today. And then finally, there is an evaluation at the very end that literally takes about a minute or so. Let us know how we did, as well as let us know additional resources that you may need to kind of help in your evaluation and understanding of the topics from today. And we'll kind of try to make it fun. We'll take some of the completed evaluations, and we'll pull one out for an Amazon $50 gift card. So if your house was like mine, Amazon is always showing up. All right, just a little bit about system sources, just level set for some of our participants who may be new to us. So just briefly on that, we've been around since 1981 and working with clients from South Central Pennsylvania all through Maryland down to the Washington, D.C. area. And so a lot of folks first come to us when they need to acquire new technologies. And while we do work in user computing, most of the work that we do is in the data center, whether that data center is on-prem or in the cloud or colo or other locations for that. So Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, and other types of cloud environments, including software as a service, regardless of where your data lives, your storage lives, your compute lives. We help to design across those areas to understand and install and support and maintain server, storage, virtualization solutions, all the security that goes around these pieces, all the other network infrastructure that kind of makes the modern data center go, whether that's an on-prem data center or in one of its many cloud variants. So, and Hewlett-Packard is one of our primary partners that we work with for these types of technologies. So people are acquiring generally because they need to improve something. So a little bit on consulting and cloud services, that's kind of where our top level consultants live and work. And so they're going to be doing the design of these data center solutions to meet and solve customers' issues. And we can kind of design solutions across that whole area from on-prem through all its cloud or colo or other variants. So we also have training. So about 600 plus courses on our training schedule at any one point. And from everywhere from virtualization, from storage to IT infrastructure, from both in general, as well as many that are kind of manufacturer specifics, for example, VMware or Cisco or others. Present is professional AV, so all the digital signage, all the Zoom rooms, WebEx rooms, Teams rooms, so all the large displays or projectors, microphones, speaker systems, from all the design to installation, all those types of work happens in our presentations group. And finally, we maintain all of the things we just mentioned, either on a reactive basis. You call us when things go bump, and whether in the middle of the day or in the middle of the night, under service and support. And then also proactively under managed services, where we are the IT department for dozens of organizations in the region. So that's a little bit about System Source today. We do have some upcoming webinars. So there's 3 there. So one tomorrow on top 10 breach scenarios from a security standpoint. Next week, if you're a golfer and just enjoy being able to get out, next Thursday evening, we're doing an indoor golf event. So you can actually hit golf balls with very high-end simulators, as well as watch the first round of the Masters. So that's next Thursday, or a week from Thursday rather. And then finally on the 23rd, we're going to be doing an Azure authentication webinar. So if you have Azure or are evaluating it, you may find that to be a very helpful one from a security and authentication standpoint. So that's what we have coming up for that. And with that, let me go ahead and hand the reins over to Mark, please.
Great, thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. So it's great to be with you today. So a little bit about my role. So Mark Kravitz with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. My role is as a field product manager for both virtualization and private cloud technologies. So I handle Private Cloud Business Edition, which is the suite we're going to talk about today, as well as the go-to-market for North America around the new VM Essentials that Chris mentioned, which is getting a lot of attention right now. And so my discussion today is going to be more in terms of 2 concepts, right? What the impact we're seeing from Broadcom, and what we're seeing in terms of the move from customers to private cloud, why things are doing. And it's all going to be around how we're helping customers open up capital to be able to run workloads more on-prem. And we'll go through a number of different things that we're doing, from the various offerings, some services that we're doing, as well as we'll touch on what VM Essentials is. Since it's something we just introduced into the market late last year. So I want to make sure you understand kind of where we see it, where it positions in the market versus what VMware is doing. So again, when you guys are come time for your VMware renewal, that you've got options, right? So I want to make sure you understand where we're going with that, and then how private cloud is going to really tie all that together. So where I'm going to start, and again, this is really nothing new, I think, to everybody, is what is happening in the industry right now, right? Obviously, Broadcom has made a number of changes, and it's forced our customers to look at other areas in terms of how they're rolling out their workloads to their users. They're looking at options. I think last year we saw a lot of pause in purchasing. It's really starting to pick up now, and I think a lot of that was based on a lot of customers we work with did probably about a 1-year VMware renewal, just to give them a little bit more time in terms of what their strategy is going to be long term. But they are looking at, are we going to have a dual hypervisor strategy, right? What workloads might fit within VMware or other hypervisors that we're looking at? Are there other ways we can utilize, whether it's containers, whether we can put more into the public cloud? Are there even things we can move back into bare metal? So I'm seeing a lot of customers are really taking the time to evaluate, but the key really is, how do we do this? How do we reduce costs without introducing more complexity into the environment? And the other part of it is what we're seeing in terms of the impact around the simplification of the portfolio, right? So really, and actually the bundles right now, it should say really 4 right now that VMware has gone to. So VCF obviously at the high end, VMware Foundation, Enterprise Plus really is we're seeing a lot of focus there. That was something that they introduced new, and then obviously VMware Standard. The challenge this has caused for a lot of customers I'm talking with is essentially, some of them are really being forced into areas that they haven't been before, meaning having to pay for different features. For example, I work with a number of customers that are on that VCF list, and they're being forced into VCF even though they're really using just basic vSphere functionality. So things like that. And I'm not sure if you guys all saw the news that came out within the last week in terms of the 72 core floor limit. So we're looking at, we have a lot of customers really trying to understand the impact, but really it's the net of it is prices are going up, and our customers are trying to figure out what are the ways that they can do to minimize this impact. And the other trend we're seeing is really around this concept of data repatriation, right? We talk to customers that that got into public cloud due to kind of a cloud first mandate, and now as we start looking at new applications being fit into the cloud, lots of different security regulations or things around data gravity, data locality are forcing a lot of things back on-prem. And what we've seen from customers is the cost of the public cloud may not be all that what they thought. Yeah, they're getting they're getting the convenience, but back-end fees that they weren't expecting, egress fees, security regulations are really starting to drive workloads back on-prem. Now the problem with that are a couple things. If I bring it back on-prem, how am I going to get it to my users? And that's where kind of the VMware issue comes into play. Can I afford to start bringing more into VMware? But the other piece is that I'm really, a lot of our customers are really used to that public cloud look and feel. So how do we create that private cloud type of experience for workloads that are, whether they're on-prem, whether they're at the edge, whether they're at the colo, but still have that hook back into the public cloud? And so what I'm going to talk about the rest is what we're specifically doing in these areas. And I'm going to do it in the context of how we're helping customers reduce the impact from Broadcom, but also how they're utilizing our offerings like Private Cloud Business Edition to create that public cloud experience for all of their, only their on-prem workloads, but also the infrastructure that we have on-prem. How do we make that effortless so they have a really good experience for all those things that they're running? So the first thing I'll talk about is optimize, right? When we talk to our customers, we want to understand first what they're working with, what are the workloads that they're using in terms of the hypervisor, what are their goals. We want to be able to get a snapshot of their environment so that we can help them make better decisions going forward. And the way that we do this is with a tool called Cloud Physics. So if you haven't heard of Cloud Physics before, this is a SaaS-based offering that essentially gets a significant amount of metrics out of VMware so we can understand utilization across virtual machines, across physical servers, across storage arrays. And it can give us insights very quickly for customers to be able to make the best decision going forward. So whether that is, I want to move to hybrid cloud, so I need to understand what workloads are really meant to be up in the public cloud, what workloads need to be on-prem, whether I'm going to be going through some type of a refresh where I need to understand, what is my actual utilization in terms of VMware storage and compute. And really at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you're making decisions based on your actual requirements so that we can help you right-size your infrastructure going forward. And the key with this is really what are the impacts, right? So number one, it's really around, the big thing with us is really around license usage, right? VMware is obviously very top of mind, and our customers are looking for any ways that they can to be able to save. And so one thing that Cloud Physics can really help is, number one, understand, are there areas where I'm over licensed so I can go ahead and fine tune and optimize my environment? Or are there areas that I can go ahead and right size my VMs? And you can see some of the statistics that we've seen. This is across all of the assessments that we've done. And you can see 40% of environments have, again, less than 75% use, right? So good bets, there are opportunities to save as well as around right sizing. And then the third piece is really around space reclamation, right? In terms of things like storage, right? A lot of us typically are overbuying just because of our buying cycle. And so there's things that we can now bring to the table to really understand what that utilization is, so we can help plan out, any type of refresh that you're doing. So the good thing about this is a 100% free to you as a customer. So again, if this is something you would like to take advantage of to get insights into what's going on in your environment, again, please reach out to us. We can definitely help you with that. Get started with cloud physics. All right, so we talked about optimizing. The next piece is agility, right? And so when we look at public cloud, the big piece, that's really the big focus of that, right? Is how do we make things simple in terms of, in terms of being able to deploy, manage, and get our workloads out to our customers. So if we're bringing that on-prem, we want to make sure that they have that same type of look and feel for not only my on-prem, my workloads on-prem, but the infrastructure that's powering it. And that's essentially what we've created with this offering called HPE GreenLake for Private Cloud Business Edition. It is our way of serving up self-service private cloud through GreenLake. And a lot of customers, again, confusion on what GreenLake is. GreenLake really is the branding in terms of how we get our services out to our customers that can be consumed either upfront or as a service, right? So we have a number of different services that customers can get access to on the platform, and one of them is this, what we call Private Cloud Business Edition, or PCB for short. But the whole goal of that is really to make VM management and the infrastructure pieces underneath it effortless, right? Where if I have a VM admin, we really want that person to be able to do more with less. So being able to deploy VMs, within a number of clicks, to be able to manage and monitor all of my infrastructure, to be able to do all of the things around lifecycle management. So things like my updates, my patching, all of really that comprehensive activities. We want to make that simple. So, again, within a solution like this, we don't have a concept of having to interface with storage, right? I can, if I'm someone who's very comfortable with VMware, it allows me to interface with my VMs, and all of that complexity around storage provisioning, things around LUNs and shares, all of that is taken care of under the covers. So you're really getting a very simple way to be able to run this. And oh, by the way, we'll talk a little bit about the infrastructure that's powering this, but the storage layer, which is kind of our next generation block storage, is able to provide 100% availability on-prem, right? So when you think about it, the most critical applications, right, that need mission critical support that really can't run in the public cloud, we can now provide a simple cloud-like experience for those types of workloads. So here's kind of an example of the things that we've worked to simplify. So number one is the initial setup, right? So when you look at all of the things that need to do to get gear on site, if I'm building a VMware environment in terms of my compute layer, my storage layer, everything with my hypervisor, a lot of that integration has all been done in the factory. So once it gets on site, we enable a very simple rollout and deployment experience, where literally within a click, the box, essentially the solution, will go ahead and self-deploy itself. So once it's ready, you're at a point where you can go ahead and serve out workloads to the customers, to your users. And we use it with things like blueprints. So if I'm actually integrating this at multi-site deployments, it's very effortless, right? And I'm not going to have solution experts and things like that on site. We've gone to make it simple. Then once it's running, you get a global dashboard to manage all of my assets, and that would be all of my infrastructure globally, right? So whether I have workloads, I have infrastructure running in my data center and a colo out at the edge, I get a single pane of glass to be able to manage not only my VMs on-prem, but also we have hook-ins into public cloud providers, including AWS and Azure. So I get a single pane of glass for my workloads, as well as all of the on-prem infrastructure that I have that's managing it. And one of the really nice things that we've done with this is drastically simplify the lifecycle management process. So we've developed a process that we call single-click upgrades that, I kind of equate it to the iPhone experience, where, we essentially put all of the updates for the stack into catalogs. So when I need to be able to update my patching and my firmware, everything with my Array OS, with my hypervisor, It allows you to download that as a package and then execute essentially a non-disruptive single-click upgrade of the entire stack, right? So my VMs, my workloads are all going to be up and running. I'm not going to have downtime. And I can do this globally. So if I actually have multiple sites that I'm serving out workloads to, I'm able to bring all that into a single cloud-like experience where, again, I can manage all of that lifecycle management from a single point and not have to be physically out at the edge or at my other sites. Again, so very simple, very cloud-like experience. It's how we're bringing the cloud to you, right? To your workloads that you have on-prem, but also having that hook into what you're still doing within the public cloud. All right, so next, let's talk about the workloads, right? And obviously that's very key, is that the way that we are going to market with, from an infrastructure perspective, is really workload optimized systems, right? And the key is how we work to strategize with you, what is the right path forward based on the workloads that you're doing, whether it's business critical workloads or mission critical that need that 100% uptime, or it's more general purpose or edge-based workloads where I need to, maybe I'm serving out just general server virtualization or workloads like VDI or something that might need a different tactic. So what we have done, taking the tactic in terms of what the infrastructure layer is basically it's the iteration of what we've been doing with hyperconverged, right? So hyperconverged obviously has been out for a while now, and the whole goal of that was really around simplifying virtualization. What we've essentially done is repackaged this as essentially private cloud, right? Which is what a lot of customers are really looking at doing right now. So two different paths that we work with our customers on this, whether the workloads are very, again, mission critical, meaning more kind of on a SAN perspective, or more general purpose. So I'll talk first on the left. So a number of years ago, we introduced a concept that we called disaggregated HCI, or DHCI. And what HP saw in the market was a gap that traditional hyperconverged had, right? So if you look at, think about traditional hyperconverged, the concept of scaling up. Well, if I need to support business critical workloads at scale, things that need lots of storage, lots of IO, that really comes at a cost with traditional HCI because it's inflexible. So as I go scale up to be able to support, business critical workloads, I'm essentially forced to be able to add storage and compute, right? And a lot of our customers are over provisioning on compute, right? Because I need to be able to satisfy the storage requirements. Well, what that caused, and it's very relative right now, is if I'm over provisioning on compute, that means I'm really taxing my VMware environment, right? I'm really seeing a bill for that, and it's becoming not cost effective to go to run workloads like that. So we came up with a concept a number of years ago called disaggregated HCI. It was the legacy of this was based on our Nimble product, right? So if you're familiar with Nimble, that's kind of where the heritage is. But the concept was to be able to provide a disaggregated backend where I can scale compute and storage independently, but it's all software defined. So I mean, it's all managed as an HCI environment. So it allows customers to be able to scale what they want when they need it, but now have all the simplicity of HCI, right? So it's very cost effective to be able to run all types of workloads that I want to run in the environment. This is probably one of the faster growing products that we've actually gone to market. Now we have this based on our next generation block array that we call our Alletra MP B10000, and I'll touch on that a little bit in a second on the advantage and where that's come from. So that's where DHCI comes. So business critical, mission critical workloads that customers want a simple way to manage. That's where DHCI fits. The other piece is around HP Simplicity. So this is our traditional hyperconverged appliance. And where this really fits is in small locations or things on the edge, because number one, I can start with 2 nodes, right? So if you see there, we packaged this within a DL325. So I can start that very small. So in 2U footprint, I can get a whole data center in a box, whole virtualization in a box. And one of the nice things about Simplicity is it comes with built-in data protection, okay? So it has all that actually built into its code, and it allows it to consume and optimize the ingest of data meaning we can do things like a number of guarantees. So about half of our customers that utilize SimpliVity for primary and backup storage are actually able to get about a 47-to-1 data efficiency. So very strong ability to reduce the stack, but get a simple way to be able to manage virtualization. So this fits very well in small areas, but also things like Robo, when I have a number of different distributed sites that I need to serve up, a small amount of VMs, but get a simplified management to that. So let me dig a little bit down into DHCI, into the components. So this is really just built on our primary, best of breed components right now. So think ProLiant servers. So again, general 2-socket servers, that are Intel based or AMD. So think our DL380s, DL360s, or if I'm on the AMD side, 325 up through 385. So really in that 2-socket server. And one of the nice things is I can configure those any way I want. So, like the limitations I might have on hyperconverged, where I need to have all of those nodes configured pretty similar. If I have many different types of applications that are going to run, I got a lot of choices on how I build this. Really more flexible, like if I was building a traditional 3-tiered stack. And then below that is our array, again, which is now using our best of breed MP B10000. So really the key here is it's simple, right? Everything is managed software defined, right? So it's all managed kind of like an HCI experience. It provides that utmost resiliency, so that 100% uptime. But one of the differences we have versus some of the HCI vendors are, because we are not software based per se, like HCI. So we don't have actually our software storage like a Nutanix or a vSAN. What that allows us to do is when those solutions, some of the challenges, when they turn on data services like deduplication and compression, that's essentially taking compute power away. So with us, because we are array based, we just have those things run on the array, right? And so what that does is it's because it's not taxing our CPU, it allows us to actually run applications faster. So that's the advantage we took and why business critical workloads are a really good fit. Now, again, the B10000 is our next generation array. The way I would look at this is, we have made a number of different acquisitions over the years, first with 3PAR and also with Nimble. So, and a lot of those fit in different areas, right, as far as up at the high end or down into the mid-market. And what we've really been working with over, over the last few years is a way to be able to simplify our portfolio and our offerings. So what the B10000, think of that as all the best things that you might have known from Nimble as well as 3PAR, all within one solution. But one of the key here is it is totally disaggregated, meaning it allows me to scale performance and capacity independently. So if I'm just looking for storage, I can just add drives. If I need performance, I can add controllers, but it allows me to do it independently. So it's really good against my cost model. Oh, by the way, it comes with 100% data availability guarantee. The way we priced this was really to drive mission critical storage down into the mid-market. So it's priced very competitively. So it gives you a lot of the things that you would expect on the high end, but really focused in the mid-market. So again, 100% data availability guaranteed, full active. So again, being able to utilize those advantages. And number one, it's AI driven, right? So the ability to not have to look for needles and haystacks. So we're autonomously finding where there are issues going on within your environment across your VM stack. So I'm not having to go in and actually search for things. I can be a lot more productive. So this is B10000 is really added a lot because it brings that 100% availability. So now I can run, if I want to now package this more as a private cloud solution, I can now get mission critical workloads within HCI. So a lot of the benefit we see with DHCI is our ability to really reduce that TCO cost. And what a lot of our customers were seeing kind of in the HCI space was, traditional HCI needs a significant amount of overhead to run mission critical workloads. So you think of what they need, right? That overhead. If I look at vSAN for say, and I'm looking at things like, what I need to support FTT2 or FTT3, right? The ability to support, multiple different simultaneous drive failures, that high levels of resiliency that business critical workloads need. Well, that comes at a cost, right? It's the amount of over provisioning that I need to be able to support that levels. And if I'm forced to essentially over provision on compute and infrastructure, well, what is the implication? Well, the implication is I'm buying more support. I'm paying for more power and cooling. And as we know now, VMware license is obviously very top of mind right now. So that's really the value of what we do with DHCI. With our stack, we're able to provide 100% availability, but we're doing it in our smallest footprint, right? And that's the key, is that we're able to reduce the amount of infrastructure that customers need, and that has a big impact on cost. In fact, you see how we compare against the highest level of resiliency for vSAN. That would be kind of like an FTT3, almost 2.5x cost savings better. So if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about these findings, again, there's a link. We can provide these slides. There's a link on there to be able to look at the third-party validation that we did to be able to compare this against traditional HCI. So that's a little bit about where DHCI fits. Now, as I mentioned, HP SimpliVity, which is kind of the second piece of Private Cloud Business Edition, this is really focused in smaller areas, things on the edge. Number one, we can drive high availability in as little as 2 nodes, right? That's something that the traditional HCI vendors, they can't do. They need a minimum of 3 to be able to start to get that availability. So, again, we're at an advantage right off the bat. But one of the other nice things is all of the aspects around data protection are all built in, okay? In fact, 50% of our customers that deploy SimpliVity are able to retire their current backup solution within a year, because again, it's all built in, right? And as I mentioned also, a lot of the value with this is our efficiency, right? We dedupe and compress all incoming data. We do once and forever globally across all tiers of storage, meaning that we can keep data in its most efficient form throughout its life cycle when it's within our SimpliVity federation. And that's what allows our customers to be able to reduce their storage costs by 90%. So we guarantee 10-to-1 data efficiency with SimpliVity, but as I mentioned before, about half our customers are seeing about a 47-to-1 data efficiency rate. Now, the main use case that we see our customers deploying this is in what we call, kind of edge locations, right? So think remote offices, could be branch sites, healthcare, manufacturing sites. Even we have customers deploying this out on oil rigs where maybe I only have a T1, a satellite link coming back and forth. So, again, the number one we talked about is 2 nodes, right? So again, we can put a significant amount of infrastructure in a small footprint, right? Starting at 2U. And because our deduplication is global, what that means is it allows us to send data very efficiently across the wire. So I'll give you an example of our customers out on oil rigs, right? So before, we had a customer that when they were actually doing their backups, they couldn't send it across the wire because over a satellite link, it was too big. So what they had to do was literally send a helicopter out to all of these additional sites just to be able to pick up the data, the tapes. And the cost of that was about $25,000 every time they did that. Well, what they were able to prove out with SimpliVity is because our backups are so efficient and I can send data very efficiently across a satellite link, they were able to stop doing those helicopter flights, and they're literally sending full backups across a satellite link because of how efficient we were. So those are the use cases we see are, again, those types of locations. Think hub and spoke. And what's also nice about this is we have global management over all of these. So very simple right-click operations that we can do either directly in vCenter or now managed within our Private Cloud Business Edition cloud-like experience. So we also did another TCO session or exercise with our third-party company because, as I mentioned, customers in that kind of distributed remote office type of solution, we're seeing lots of advantages, right? When you think of being able to start at 2 nodes, lowering backup and replication costs, and when you look at doing this across, multiple different sites, well, that starts to add up, especially when I start considering what the cost of VMware is. And I'll talk about something very interesting in a little bit when we talk about VM Essentials. So again, if you're interested in looking at what we did with this paper, if branch offices are a use case you have, we have something that might be able to help you there. All right, so I'm going to transition now. We're going to talk a little about now what we're doing in the hypervisor. So I know there's a lot of questions here. So if you have, definitely if there's questions, please put it in the chat. But I'll talk now a little bit about kind of the big thing that customers are looking at. How do I modernize my hypervisor strategy in terms of what I'm seeing with VMware? So as I mentioned, this is obviously something that is very top of mind with customers, and we made a big decision last year that we are going to get into the hypervisor business. So we introduced what we call HP VM Essentials. Okay, we launched this went GA in December, and really the goal is to reduce the impact of it. So what I will tell you is, our goal with this, VMware is a very mature product. We are not attempting to have every single feature that VMware has, but what we're looking to really do is 80 to 90% of what customers are using on the day-to-day basis from a server, from an ESXi, vSphere perspective. So if I look at, if I'm comparing it to bundles, so things like what you would get in standard or even into Enterprise Plus, that's really what we're targeting right there is most of the features, kind of those core features. And I'll go through a little bit of what the features that we're looking at here. But also, we believe that a lot of customers are going to have a dual hypervisor strategy, right? We think most customers, you shouldn't have to be forced to go all in at once. And so what we're working on our customers is how do we provide a simple way to be able to get your feet wet with VM Essentials. Maybe I'm starting with tier 2 workloads or even into test dev, but I have a path to be able to move my workloads over when I want, but have a simplified management of all of my VMs. So one of the things about VM Essentials is it's going to allow me to manage both my VMware and my KVM, and that's what it's based on. This is KVM hypervisor that we've done all through a single pane of glass. So I'll talk about that. And one of the other things I will say, and this is coming up, there's a lot of vendors out there, a lot of open source vendors that are doing KVM. What they don't have is the backing of a large enterprise like HPE. So think of things like global 24/7 support. There aren't many other games in town right now that are providing an enterprise class hypervisor, right? And that's really when you look at what you are doing in terms of, betting your business on this, that is an advantage that we have, is really reducing your risk in terms of that. So we feel pretty good about where we're at from a hypervisor standpoint. So the story behind this, what we've basically done. So about a year ago at our Discover conference, if you haven't heard, at HP Discover, we do that once a year in the States. It's coming up in June. That's our annual customer conference out in Vegas. So again, definitely if you're interested, I would encourage you to look into it. We announce a lot of different technologies and things that we're doing. But we, a year ago, our CEO, Antonio Neri, was on stage, and he made a statement that we were getting into this business. All right, at the time we called it our virtualization capability for private cloud. Now, we didn't talk a lot about what we were doing at that point, and the reason is because we were in the midst of a strategic acquisition of a company called Morpheus. And if you have not heard of Morpheus, the value of Morpheus is really, if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a lot of different workloads there, right? Bare metal, container, lots of different virtualization stacks from KVM to Nutanix to VMware, even Proxmox, and also the public cloud. What Morpheus does at its core basis is it allows a customer to manage and orchestrate and automate all of these types of workloads through a single framework. Okay, but it also does a number of things around helping customers get to full hybrid cloud management, right? So if I had requirements to be able to deliver self-service to my developers, or I want to be able to automate and provision full database instance workloads, that's what Morpheus does, right, at its core. Now, what Morpheus had done internally is they had actually, before we acquired them, had developed a KVM hypervisor. And we're bringing that to market into a public beta. what HP did is we made the decision to acquire them. And if you look at the bottom of the screen under virtualization, we essentially took two capabilities of Morpheus, and that's what we created as VM Essentials. So it's essentially Morpheus with everything turned off, but the ability to provision and manage KVM, which we're calling VM Essentials, and the ability to provision and manage VMware. Okay, that is what VM Essentials is on the market today. Okay, so right now we are offering that in what we call our standalone model, which basically is we will provide you with the software, right? You purchase the VM Essentials software, and as long as you are running that on certified components, right? Things that we have gone and tested, which is right now is our stack, meaning our ProLiant servers, and then our Alletra storage, what we talked about earlier in the session. You can go ahead and run a virtual machine cluster, a KVM cluster, and you're going to be fully supported. Okay, so that's what we certified today. The next step is now getting that into our private cloud solution. So we talked about things like DHCI, PCBE, and SimpliVity. Now, how do we bring automation into play? Meaning when these things show up, I've been able to automate the deployment, and then it has all of that hardware integration where now I can tap into things like the lifecycle management, single click upgrades and stuff like that, and manage it more from a cloud perspective. So that's what you're going to see next. We'll start releasing that with DHCI. Then we'll start releasing it with SimpliVity. What's very interesting with SimpliVity is, we have a lot of customers now. If you think back to the 72 core issue that customers are having, you'll see our pricing model in a little bit, but now the ability to get very small but provide virtualization at a really cost-effective price. Some very interesting things that we're going to be bringing down the pipe. So that's kind of where we are now. And you might be asking the question, well, I may not be an HP server customer today. What do I do? I really like this. Long-term, our goal is to certify third party. So we're not there yet. It's more of kind of a longer term thing, but that is something that we are going to look at. But as we mentioned, there is a lot of value in what we're providing in terms of, the hardware integration with HPE. So a little bit on the features. So what I would go with this is really think of all of the core things that kind of the table stake things that you need for VMware. And I would call that as, DRS, HA, live migration, being able to do snapshots or full VM backups, all of those kind of core table stakes things we have in the solution right now. Okay, couple things that we are working on, I will tell you, within the next few releases that are very key to customers. I'd say the biggest one really, and I know I get this question a lot, is what are we doing around third-party data integration, data protection integration? So right now we are working with kind of the main players in that space. So think Veeam, Commvault, and Cohesity. We have agent-based protection with them right now, and we are actually working with those vendors for full integration. Okay, so that is something that we are working towards as well. So again, fully featured hypervisor solution that we're providing. Again, all of really we're trying to play in that standard enterprise plus phase is where we're at. But again, the value is, again, I can manage all of these through a single cluster. So if I have VMware environments, if I have somewhere else, and I start out with a KVM environment, I can go ahead and simplify it. One of the nice things we have, though, is when we look at what we did with Private Cloud Business Edition, that actually enables you to run both separate clusters on that same investment. So if I say had workloads that I still have to have in VMware, and I want to start moving things over to KVM, I can do that, and I have all maybe two separate compute clusters all running off the same array. Those are things that our competitors cannot do. So if you look at, like Nutanix, for example, another game in town, that's hyper-converged, right? When you look at what we're doing with VME, you can use, if I just wanted to run standalone ProLiant local storage, I can do that. If I wanted to run traditional three-tiered architecture, I can do that. If I wanted to consume this as DHCI or even hyper-converged, like what we're going to do with SimpliVity, I can do that as well. So you're going to have a lot of different options in terms of how you are able to consume virtualization. And one of the other things we're also working on that I know customers asking, well, how are we going to do migrations? So this is going to be kind of a step-by-step process. we're going to first enable, I would say, image conversion in the initial release that we have. That will allow you to kind of convert kind of a handful of VMs at a time. There'll still be some data migration work. One of the things that we are working on longer term is, how do we do kind of a more elegant mass migration for customers that want to do, lots of VMs. So those are things that is more on the roadmap. One of the key technologies that is a big part of that, we made a big acquisition a number of years with a company called Zerto. If you haven't, learned about Zerto before, it has a very strong play in disaster recovery. So if you think of what VMware is doing with SRM, that's what we're doing with Zerto. But the other big piece of it, other than DR and ransomware protection, is its ability to migrate data. From whether that's from the public cloud down to on-prem or vice versa, or in between clusters. That's going to be a key technology that's going to help us really jumpstart that VM migration. So that's what you'll see more enhancements with VM Essentials as we start going through a number of revs. So let's start at the money slide. This is what I know a lot of customers want to see. What is it going to cost me? So we took a tactic to introduce disruptive pricing within this. So we have moved to a pure socket-based model with this. So I don't care how many cores you run, we will not have a core limit. You're going to pay one price per socket. And the price is very attractive. So $600 per year per socket is what the list price we have on this. So it comes down to $50 a month per socket. Okay, so very cost effective. So you can consume this in a number of different ways, whether that's 1 year, whether that's 3 year, whether that's 5 year. Okay, so those are what we're offering, and that is a subscription model. So we are using subscription, so that will cover both your support as well as the licensing to be able to utilize VM Essentials. Okay, but obviously, again, very cost effective when I'm looking at the cost of, if I'm, having to get into that VVF or VCF. We are a very, if I want to stay and kind of need those Enterprise Plus features, things like DRS, we can now provide that at a very cost-effective price, a really good alternative. Now, for customers that need to get into kind of those VCF capabilities, right? When I'm looking at, what I get with VCF, or even from the ARIA suite, or what they used to call vRealize. That's really where Morpheus steps in. So that's where I can upgrade to Morpheus to be able to get full hybrid cloud management. So things like application provisioning, cluster management, runbook automation of a lot of the different technologies that you see below. That's what you can do with Morpheus. So the number of ways you can do it. We see a lot of our customers really starting with that VMware portion. Let's get in and solve the VMware issue. Then once we're ready to start moving on to hybrid cloud, we can provide you an upgrade into Morpheus. Or you could start at the top level with Morpheus, and then all of the hybrid cloud, all of the VM Essentials piece would be on top of it, would be underneath that. And where this really is putting us is in a very interesting position when you look at a lot of the other vendors that are looking at the hybrid, are really pushing hybrid cloud. Number one, we're the only one here that owns all of the IP from the software and the hypervisor stack all the way down to the individual components. So this allows us to do a lot of those integrations where we can add automation into play, like single-click upgrades and hardware management and monitoring, all within the same place that I'm doing VM monitoring, right? No other vendor is able to do that. And oh, by the way, with Morpheus, we can now manage across the stack. So if you have still assets in Azure or AWS or other virtualization environments, we're able to manage across the stack for you, right, and really provide that true hybrid cloud experience. So again, we think we're in a really good position here. VM Essentials obviously is really changing the game for us. So let's bring this all together in terms of how does this impact the TCO overall, and then we'll be able to stop and answer some questions. So VM Essentials is a big piece of this. But if you look at all of the things that we're doing combined, from first getting in and analyzing your environment with cloud physics, how do we find, again, if we're really looking at optimizing that VMware environment, finding where I can go ahead and provide, better, where I'm overutilized, Those are things that Cloud Physics can help you with, as we said. Second, we want to give you choice. We think customers are going to have a dual hypervisor strategy. We feel like we have a good platform with Private Cloud Business Edition to help enable that. So maybe there's applications that have to stay on VMware, but we can give you choice and be able to move some of those maybe tier 2 applications off to VM Essentials and lower that VMware bill when that comes, when that's going to come across your desk. And then lastly, we talked about Private Cloud Business Edition. Again, a lot of the goal here is we're not forcing customers to over provision, right? It's how we're able to reduce the stack. And I wanted to end here with a customer example, just on some customers that are going through this process. So Cambrian Credit Union is a referenceable customer that we have up in Canada, I believe they're up in central Canada. And you can see where they started first was with Cloud Physics. And after they ran Cloud Physics, they noticed that they were able to save, based on the data, 40% of their licensing. Well, a lot of that implication came because they didn't need as many hosts to run Private Cloud Business Edition. And so they were able to shrink their hosts down from 10 to 6, get optimization with PCBE. And again, that is how they were able to get a really good TCO and get into something called Private Cloud Business Edition. I can also tell you that they are actually starting to they are actually one of our first customers that has been taking VM Essentials into production. So they are now introducing that into their environment to start taking some of those workloads off of VMware. So that's what I have today. I wanted to thank everybody for your time. We can go into questions after this, but again, if there's things, a few things to recommend if you're interested in more. Cloud Physics, as I mentioned, that's something that you can do for free. So I would definitely recommend, if you're interested in seeing some of the data and the insight that can bring into my environment, talk to System Source about that. If you are interested in VM Essentials, we are providing 60-day trials, so you can bring that in. We have other options potentially for proof of concept, so if it really interests you, or if you want to go ahead and see a demo of it, those are things that we can offer. But we also have a test drive, so if you go onto our website, you can actually go into a couple of different scenarios where I can get into the console and provision some virtual machines, more with a guided simulator. So if you want to experience some things around VM Essentials, please, I would definitely recommend. And you see we got a few things where, again, you can learn more. So with that, I wanted to thank you for your time today. I definitely appreciate it. And I'll hand it back to Chris and see if there are any questions.
Great, Mark. Thank you so much. No questions at this point, although you did have a thank you, Mark, in there, so we appreciate that. So just one quick question, one quick piece here is, particularly the Cloud Physics could be a great way to look at your environment and to start looking at what options would be. So we strongly recommend that for you. You can note that it's one of the options right there on the evaluation for additional resources. So if that or some of the other things that are listed on the evaluation are of some interest, let's let us know. And we'll also pull from the completed ones for that $50 Amazon gift card. So thank you again, Mark, for the excellent information. Thanks to each of you for participating. Hope you have a great afternoon. Thanks, everyone.